Again, thank you, Danielle, and your team for this incredible event. I'm really excited to be here for the second time. Last year, it was like, mind-blowing to be here after COVID, in person, making connections, hearing beautiful speakers and stories. It has been incredible. Thank you to you and your team. I'm happy to be talking to everybody, especially after lunch, so people are hopefully happy with food and ready to engage. And I'm also excited to be presenting with Bunny. She's a friend, and we shared some graduate school stories, and it's an honor. So what I'm going to be talking about today are some lessons learned from integrating human-centered design and community placement assignments of existing social sciences and humanities courses at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. So that's So my name is Saadeddine Shehab. I'm the Associate Director of Assessment and Research at the Siebel Center for Design. I am an alum of the University of Illinois. I graduated in 2019 with a PhD in Curriculum and Instruction. I focus a lot on collaborative problem solving and how teams get together to work on open-ended problems. And of course, human-centered design and design thinking is very close to my heart since I joined the center in 2019, along with Rachel and other people. And we've been working with beautiful team of undergraduate and graduate students around research studies that hopefully can inform the design, implementation, and evaluation of design thinking and human-centered design activities in formal and formal learning environments. Our mission is to practice, model, and teach design thinking using human-centered design to reimagine our campus, community, and collective world. And we really look forward every day to have this beautiful building become more and more as a host and hub for people who come from multiple disciplines from all over campus. Our campus is huge, and just seeing people come and work together, and collaborate from different generations, different disciplines, teachers, students, engineers, and educators, it has been a beautiful experience. So before starting to talk about the work, I would like to shout out and thank you the team that worked with me on this work that I'm going to share with you today. We have research scholars at the Siebel Center for Design. Carrie James, Gail Ross, and Lucia Sanchez worked with me on this. Carrie basically is leading the majority of this work. I really want to shout out to her. She just finished her dissertation in the fall, and she got her dissertation done on the work that I'm going to present here. So, of course, many further questions, please you can go to her. I'll share her contacts at the end. And then I want to also thank the people who worked with us from the faculty. So we have Professor Chris Span from education, we have Curtis Mason, and we have Professor Ann Abbott from the liberal arts and sciences. So thank you. Okay, so because we downloaded the presentation as PowerPoint, we shared it. All of them are ones, which is great. So I'm going to be talking about everything all at once. But anyway, so I'm going to just start first by sharing how do we view human-centered design at the Siebel Center for Design. Then I'm going to jump into talking about our integration strategies. How do we approach the integration of human-centered design in existing humanities and social sciences courses in specific in this talk? And then I'm going to share with you the integration principles that we usually follow, and I'm going to provide some examples from 3 courses that we've been engaged in since 2018. And then I'm going to finish with lessons learned, so we open it up to discuss and talk about these lessons. I would like also to learn from you. I know that, as Danielle mentioned, many of us are probably engaged in similar work, so it would be really nice to exchange resources and learn from one another. I already spoke to Devani. What we're going to do is I'm going to stop, of course, at the end of the talk, give some chance for feedback questions. She's going to present, give some time for feedback question, and hopefully at the end we will open it up for the time that I love the most, which is let's talk, let's exchange ideas, let's see how we can, build on each other's work and resources to keep making progress on this work. So for us, human-centered design is simply a creative problem-solving approach that uses design thinking processes and methods and tools to identify unmet needs of certain population in order to collaboratively and iteratively develop solutions. I start with that slide all the time to make sure that our people, our audience know what we're talking about. And then I tell people, if you didn't get anything, please focus with me on these 4 points. We just HCD, when I say HCD or human-centered design, I'm speaking of an approach that relies on empathy. We try to prioritize and value connections with humans. Always think that you are a human as well, okay? And your team are humans, so this is extremely important to always keep in mind. HCD relies on iteration and that idea of prototyping, learning from failure, keep trying, keep experiencing, keep experimenting. And then we know that we have research telling us if human-centered design approach and processes are implemented appropriately and effectively, usually we have innovative and relative solutions to real-world problems. And finally, a solution can be anything. It can be a product, it can be an experience, it can be a change, a service, whatever. So why human-centered design in higher education? We have 4 points that I can speak about in here. HCD can first of all be used and approached to design learning experiences, and it is shown that it can help us solve educational problems of practice. Education researchers using human-centered design as a way to work, as a way to do our jobs. Human-centered design can provide an authentic problem-solving context that can feature multidisciplinary collaboration. So it can create that space where people can come from multiple disciplines and build on each other's expertise to solve a real-world challenge. Engaging students in HCD projects is supported by multiple learning theories, 3 that I bring to the attention of everyone: constructivism, experiential learning, and situated learning. And the idea that people come to the table with experiences, they kind of like reconstruct those learnings, those experiences on the table as they get some newer concepts or they engage in certain experiences. The idea of contextualization or situation of learning and how effective it is in helping people really realize why I'm learning what I'm learning, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then finally, HCD can help students develop 21st century mindsets and skills that are noted in educational reforms, and they are important for the workplace, and they are important and noted for universities and colleges. A list of these mindsets that we try to stick to are the human-centeredness mindset, the experimental mindset, the collaborative mindset, the thinking about thinking or metacognition mindset, communicative mindset, and creative mindset. So integrating human-centered design in existing courses. How do we integrate, or what are the possibilities of integrating human-centered design in courses, given its importance in education, as I just explained? We have 3 possible ways, in my opinion. You can teach with human-centered design. You can teach about it, and you can teach through it. And that's what we usually engage in with faculty when they come and express interest. So simply, you can be a faculty member who wants to use the human-centered design processes and tools to design and implement learning experiences for students. You can be, I want to teach about the human-centered design processes and tools, so learners that can really value those and can start using them to solve their own problems and kind of like develop the mindsets that we talked about. And you can teach through human-centered design. This is kind of like you're trying to facilitate learning and applying the disciplinary content, such as engineering, chemistry, biology, education, as learners implement the human-centered design processes and tools. So I'm gonna now take a step, towards, okay, let's focus on the humanities and social sciences courses. We defined human-centered design, we talked about the mindsets, we talked about how can we integrate human-centered design in existing courses. Let's focus on the humanities and social sciences courses. So these courses are usually offered by colleges such as education, social work, liberal arts, and sciences. The key objective of these courses is to provide students with understanding of human culture, human behavior, history, and society. The content of these courses is usually very relevant to current social issues and students' life activities. And finally, we have these courses are supported by situated learning and contextualization. That's why many of these courses try to kind of like incorporate what we call the community placement assignments or community-based assignments. So they give the students that window or space to kind of experience this content or concepts that they are learning in these courses in a real-world environment. So one thing that we noticed in the existing courses, they kind of like follow that format, that general format. Of course, that's a general one. We have exceptions, lots of them. But the general format is, let's lecture first in a week, let's lecture. and let's kind of like engage students in learning about certain concepts or content. And then let's go to discussion sections, and this applies usually whenever you have courses like 150 students. You can't just only lecture. You kind of have a day where you lecture, and then the other days you have 4 or 5 discussion sessions ran by multiple TAs, and that's kind of an issue where you have a big university of like 50 to 6,000 students. And then we kind of like have a community placement assignment integrated in what do you want the course to do. Usually the community placement assignment, as I mentioned, its purpose is to connect students to certain communities relevant to the course of the topic. And then what happens is you expect the students that they're going to make the connections and they're going to use what they are learning in the class and in the discussion to actually navigate those community placement assignments. But unfortunately, what we end up doing is we provide students with an open-ended scenario. It's very ill-structured, it's very open-ended, very complex. We kind of sometimes provide minimal or like no guidance sometimes, feedback or reflection. There is kind of sometimes no explicit connection between what I'm learning in the course and what I'm doing in the community or with the community members, which is an issue because, again, this is kind of like, they know how to do it, they should be able to do it, they are like, in higher education. And then finally, we have studies showing limited impact on students' learning. And here it depends on how are we defining students' learning, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to try to bring human-centered design to the table to be able to counter in the next few slides. So how can we integrate human-centered design in existing community placement assignments? What was the impact on students' learning, depending on how you're defining or co-defining, let me say, learning with the instructors and the TAs? And then what are the lessons learned so far? And how can I learn from the audience also what's happening in your rankings? So the 3 existing courses that I'm going to use as examples to demonstrate the principles that I'm going to talk about in a minute are an Education for Social Justice course, an English Education Methods course, and a Language for Health Professions course. Our integration principles in these courses are, we first of all need to co-design the curriculum and instruction with instructors and TAs. We need to involve them from the very, very, very early on. Second thing is, you need to teach the students about and through human-centered design if you are really willing for them to make those connections and to kind of engage and use design thinking and reflect on what's going on and actually learn the content of the course within the community placement exercise. We need to scaffold the students' engagement in the research-supported activity. We need to provide explicit reflection opportunities for the students to actually keep thinking about those connections between the content and what they're doing. And finally, evaluate the impact on students' learning. So in the next few slides, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each principle and try to demonstrate how did we use the principle to actually do the work within those 3 courses that I mentioned. So the first one is co-designing with instructors and TAs. So usually this goes over 2 semesters. One semester we call the development phase semester, and then the other one is the implementation phase or iteration 1 semester. In the development phase semester, what we did is, as a team, we meet with the instructors and TAs to exchange ideas and resources. These are very, very fun and nice meetings where people we assign 1 hour and we end up to be living in the room for like 4 hours and we lose track of time, which is awesome. Both teams explore potential of HCD integration. We kind of present ourselves to those people. This is what we're trying to do in here. This is how we define human-centered design. This is how we model it. This is what we think it can find its way into your class. What do you think? What do you do in the class? And then we keep going. Sometimes it has to be multiple sessions until we arrive to kind of an integration model. And we start kind of putting a plan of action to co-design the materials. In the implementation phase, what we do is instructors and TAs take the lead in implementing the course materials. We become more of like behind the scene, but we always need to provide support and collect evaluation data. And then we analyze the data, and then we meet to kind of exchange what we learned, what they have been learning from the experience, and then we keep iterating. And then we iterate. This is a picture collected from like a summer 2021 meeting. This is Carrie James, our FCD scholar, meeting with 2 TAs from the Education for Social Justice course. And we were talking about possibilities of integration. And this was, I think, the first time where we both came to the fact that, oh, okay, you know what, we don't only need in-class activities, we also need to make sure that students engage in out-of-class activities as they learn and engage in the content and human-centered design before they actually go to the content, to the community and start, or the community placement assignment and start actually working with the community. So kind of we need 3 points before we, or 2 points of practice before we kind of move to the actual authentic assignment. That's also an example from Education 201 showing like timeline. These things take a lot of time and we are not done yet. So in fall 2018, we began collaboration with the course instructor of Education for Social Justice person. We initiated the connection. We kind of like did those meetings. Iteration 1 was in spring 2019. Then we had to put stuff on hold, went to iteration 2 in fall 2022. We started doing more integration of empathic techniques and student scaffolds, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. And then we did iteration 3, where we started expanding the booklet, and we added also a TA's guide for the booklet or the activity that we generated. And then finally now it's kind of like a booklet that became integral in the course. It is part now of the course, but it took like around 4 years to reach that stage. So this thing like take time. And with that course, what we ended up doing is integrated human-centered design in the form of a booklet or a toolkit, similar to the one that was shared in the previous session, in light of the research that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. The second piece is, or principle, teaching students about and through human-centered design. You can't just tell people design thinking, you know, is great and we define it and we love it and here are some examples, etc. One thing that I personally noticed when I joined the center in 2019, I did not know anything about design thinking or human-centered design. I started learning from the people who are way more experienced than me in the field. I needed to kind of dig in the literature to do some learnings about what is that approach, you know? And there are lots of awesome models that are out there. I kind of like thought with a team of mine that we needed a model that is a little bit more approachable and simple. I know that it brings a huge process and a huge beast, I like to call it, into a very, you know, condense it into very simple stuff. But I mean, this is what we want in a university like this, because I can't engage with a faculty member for more than an hour, you know. And some people come to us and they don't also did not hear of design thinking. They're just interested in engaging with it and try to integrate it in their courses. So we wanted something that is, you know, approachable, accessible, easy to explain. And we built on existing models like the D-School model and IDEO model and lots of other models out there. And we kind of like said, okay, let's think of the approach as 5 spaces. And each space has a target of engaging people in creating choices and divergent, convergent thinking. We have the understand space, synthesize space, ideate space, prototype space, implement space. And then we chunked each space into a set of clear processes that we attached to concrete practices that the teacher can realize if the student is actually doing the practice or not. That was the purpose behind kind of like sticking to that model. In these courses, and again, given time, and I know that Daniel Lake, I said Lake because I cite you as Lake et al. So Lake et al. did a really beautiful study on checking out like courses that do human-centered design. Where do they go in the process, right? And then these courses or these types of courses, again, because of time, we cannot kind of go beyond ideation. Like we are stuck in this process until like here, unless we do something else, which I will talk about in the lessons learned. But that's usually what we focus on. We try to tell people like, if that's what you can do, that's fine, as long as we share with the students from the very beginning that this is the whole process. For the sake of time, we're going to try to engage you in these 3 processes, of course, in a scaffolded way with reflections. Now, the scaffolding students' engagement in research-supported HCD integration or HCD activities. For the humanities and social sciences, we rely a lot on the work by these researchers. We have Elizabeth Segal and her work on social empathy and the cognitive affective dimension that she talks about in relation to empathy. We rely on Hess and Fila's work. I love their work because it's very practical. They present 12 techniques that they show by evidence. If you engage in those, there's a high chance that you're gonna arrive to that development of social empathy. Techniques like direct observation or projection, meaning mentally engaging yourself in envisioning, you in someone else's shoes. And then finally, Adams Royalty's work on reflective design practice and the need to have reflection in these activities. Reflection is key to kind of like take this whole design experience and design thinking experience from the academic context into more of an applied context. So that's extremely important. So with that being said, we took those learnings and we started thinking of, okay, how can I transform this into more of toolkits, of tangible tools that both teachers, instructors, and students can rely on. And that's a tool from the Education for Social Justice course. As I mentioned, it's kind of ended up to be a workbook. As you notice, we have in-class activities. The one that I have on the right is more on the low inference nodes and how do I identify low inference nodes. And the one on the left is kind of the out of class activity where students read about accessibility and kind of engage in an exercise that to kind of take notes, etc. And this is all happening before we hop into the community placement exercise and go to the actually wherever we are assigned in the community to do the work. So kind of we develop, that observation skill and writing notes skill and thinking of accessibility stuff, etc. Another tool, this is from the English methods course. So this is a Miro board, okay? And Miro board is, I'm assuming everybody here knows Miro board. Anybody does not know what Miro board is? Excellent, so I can proceed. So a Miro board, basically, we have like cards, and each card is labeled in terms of the processes or practices that I shared in the model. That's why the model was important, because it helped us align things. And kind of we ask people to go in and keep documenting what they're doing as they empathize, as they debrief findings, how they are organizing and defining. And then each student gets kind of like a board, and the teacher can access that board, especially if the course is has small number of students, like the English one had like 16 students. And then finally, providing, or the importance of providing explicit reflective opportunities. Like when we design these things, we intentionally ask students questions like this. Tell us how you think this resource, helped you better understand the US Latinx communities and healthcare. This is pulled from the language course, language and community course. Like having these explicitly in there helps the students again make connections between what am I doing in the course, how is this relevant to what I do in the community, or if I'm learning something from the community, how can I tie it back to what I'm doing in the course. Finally, evaluating impact on students' learning. And I'm gonna be I'm gonna share very broadly findings in here. If anybody is interested in the research story itself, there's lots of studies and papers that I can share with you and conference presentations. So this is kind of like the research work that we did in the Education for Social Justice course. The target learning outcome, and that's important, like setting what do you wanna measure? And these venues are very intriguing because there's a lot to measure. But unfortunately, like, how can I measure? And then developing the appropriate measurement tools and designing instruments if they do not exist. I mean, everybody in the room knows the hustle of assessment, so this is big. But I mean, target learning outcome like social empathy, we tried to kind of target it through pre-post tests, classroom observations, interviews, students' workbooks. And one of the key findings was integrating HCD in the course successfully engage students in the empathic techniques that I talked about and processes of human-centered design during the community placement assignment. But development of a big construct like social empathy is very limited. And it's limited by other factors. One of the key factors was time and feedback. Like, social empathy is a huge thing. I mean, Elizabeth Segal wrote a whole book called Social Empathy. Like, it's so hard to kind of like measure that, although she provides a validated instrument to do it, and we used it, but we didn't see any kind of changes because I think the students themselves didn't understand what is social mobility to start with. So how can we change that? And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. The second key finding is from the English methods course. HCD has the potential to support pre-service teachers with concrete approach for enacting practices that can help develop stronger understandings of students' lived experiences. This led actually to implementing culturally sustaining teaching during the community placement teaching assignment, but we had an issue of transfer. How can you transfer this beyond the course itself? So that was one of the issues that we encountered. And the last one, we set some, and this is where we start learning, because this course came after the first two courses. So we started kind of learning that, hey, let's not hit big constructs. Let's keep our feet on the ground. And let's go with like, okay, knowledge of performing these understand and synthesize spaces. Let's see if there is a development of human-centered mindset and metacognitive mindset. And let's kind of at the end check if there's understanding of interplay between language and culture in health and wellness of US Latinx communities. Again, data was collected. Key finding, again, integrating HCD in the community placement assignment had impact on the outcomes like the performing or knowledge of performing the processes, the development of some mindsets, but again, we cannot see something that is as big as interplay between language and culture. So what are the lessons learned? Integrating human-centered design in community placement assignment of humanities and social sciences courses. First, it better frames the assignment into an authentic and meaningful task that can positively actually impact the community. And I'm assuming that we have seen in the past 10 years, I would say, a transformation in higher education. I feel like every course now has group work. Every course now, whenever you have the opportunity to connect with the community, we connect with the community. So why not kind of like try to integrate something? Because these projects, instead of just doing them for a grade, let's do them to impact lives of people. The second one is it requires co-designing, like just co-design the stuff with the instructors and include the teaching assistants if the course has teaching assistants, because they are the people who are on the ground and they do the work. Without them, nothing will work. Support course instructors and TAs to provide appropriate and concrete feedback for students as they complete the assignment. As I mentioned, at some point in time with the Education for Social Justice course, we had to design a teaching manual. We had to design a teaching assistance manual, and we had to go per week to their weekly meeting to talk about training and issues and things that they are facing. So it's an ongoing, hectic process. Requires continuous training and support for course instructors and TAs. Last one, or no, we still have a last slide, but this last one on this slide, it's hard to sustain. This is something hard to sustain, especially in large courses and classes that switch instructors and TAs constantly. So for example, after we did all the work with the Education for Social Justice course, at some point in time, we had a switch in instructor. So this is easy because the instructor, as I mentioned, leads the course, but the TAs are the people who had to do the work. And then we started seeing, oh, a full cohort of TAs went out, and we have another new cohort of TAs. And I'm like, oh, okay, how are we going to do this? And we had to do summer trainings, etc. And this is kind of a problem that we still kind of struggle with, especially in courses where these things happen often.
Can you give it just the size of that course?
Yeah, it's kind of like 150 students every semester attend this course.
And then it's like 7 TAs.
Yeah, and there are between 7 and 10 TAs. Yeah. And then the last slide is for students. It assists students in managing the complexity of the community placement assignment. I find this super valuable because you can't give students just like a task like this and assume they will know how to do all the connections and navigate, etc. And with that, when you have some stuff that are structured but still keep it free for thinking creatively and for engaging, etc., you're basically positively impacting students' learning outcomes, such as human-centeredness and metacognition. So we're not kind of limiting them, we're just trying to help them navigate. And finally, we can potentially impact outcomes, big ones, like social empathy and integration of language and culture, if more time and feedback are provided. And maybe it is time to disrupt higher education again and kind of like flip the whole education system. Instead of having courses with projects, maybe we need to have projects with courses. So I start with the community placement project, and then the students will choose which courses to take, you know, in order to kind of keep going on this project. And this will help me probably, you know, overcome the idea that we need to stop at some point on ideation, or we're still struggling with the fact that students do not have enough time to spend and understand and synthesize spaces. Hey, we will see. We love to disrupt stuff in this group. So, and that's it. Thank you so much.
Do you want to take questions now, or are we transitioning to taking them at the end?
So I went a little bit over time. So I don't know. That's up to you. I'm fine. I mean, we can, if you want, we can take 5 minutes for questions now.
Absolutely.
And then we can proceed for the second.
And then we'll take questions just to talk.
Have you ever pitched what you just said, projects with courses, to anyone at the provost or whatever level of decision making? And if so, what happened?
I haven't.
I
I have not, because I mean that's why I'm looking
We're
at
in a
Rachel,
position to do that.
because
We report to the provost, like my boss is the provost. These are ongoing conversations. Our university is very big and very siloed, so there are pockets of opportunity in which to prototype and pilot exactly what you said. So I would imagine that if we fast forward 3 years from now, we will have some data around this.
Please report back because we want to know.
I sound just like a question really on that. I was thinking about you for this whole presentation. How are you, if I can ask, how are you funding? Are the TAs just automatically part of the course and you're just buddying up with like a system that's already unfolding, or are you funding this?
okay. So what we do usually is we kind of, first of all, we get state funds and we get grant money funds, right?
Okay.
So usually the grants that we do are in collaboration with faculty members, and we kind of like contribute with the human-centered design content, and now we have ideas around booklets and all of that stuff. So we get sometimes on-campus funding and external funding to do that work. But if it's kind of something that is very new and we think it can be helpful to build models that can influence our work in other departments, let's say, we ask to, we use some of our state funds that we get every year to be able to seed the work, you know, and build on some evidence that we can rely on to ask for more funding.
So the TAs, is that a part of the system, the institution that's?
TAs we don't pay for, the TAs we pay for by the college.
Is there sustained funding?
So this is where, I mean, this is a question. We're still too new and we're still building out these relationships.
Yeah, and this is where but again, what I like about our center, and sometimes we have to step in. For example, what Rachel said about the education for social justice, the TAs were already paid, right?
Yeah.
But when we want to invite the TA in summer to work with us on co-designing stuff, this is around like 4 hours of their time a week. So this is where we needed to step in and be like, okay, can we hire you for like some hours in the summer if you don't have anything? And then you can train the other TAs, like we kind of work with 2 or 3 TAs, and then we help them to train others as well. So we're trying to find tweaks around the situation, but I mean, unless the whole system kind of like is disrupted, it's so hard to continuously get funding and again, guaranteeing sustainability.
Right. So we use our budget strategically to do our own investment in R&D in order to prove out a point, in order to make a convincing case to a dean, a head of a department, in order to get them more funding. So that's why when Saad showed it's like a 4-year cycle here, the first 2 years we invested the money, and then we made a case, and then we were able to get either more money in the state fund to showcase what we're doing because it's awesome and can scale, or it proves out into going into data for a grant that we have to approach, and then it gets paid. So this is all, it's kind of like a shell game of monopoly money of our state funds.
Leslie Ann, last question.
So Rachel mentioned silos, right? I wonder if you are able to engage your college of design in your conversations about I know that sometimes there's like a split between the design center and the college, and I'm just curious.
The College of Design, or the School of Art and Design has very little capacity capacity and bandwidth to work at this level of detail. Try to make it easier for them to engage, but right now, 5 years in, they're just still tapped out as a public university, and every student counts in terms of all the sections that they have to teach. And year one, I really tried to bring them in, but they were like, I just don't have the time. Unfortunately, it's not due to interest, and that's a common theme across our university in general.
Yes.
But I would love to engage much more deeply with our design department, given I'm an alum of it, double alum of it, but it's we're not there yet. Maybe we'll be, I wish I could just blow the whole thing up and integrate it completely, but we're not there.
Thank you so very
Of
much.
course, thank you.